you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to all of the nominees for being here. Congratulations on your nomination. Ms. Maid, if I could start with you. Would you agree with me that child exploitation crimes are serious crimes?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, I agree.
Would that include child pornography offenses?
Yes, Senator.
Do you think that those offenses and the child pornography epidemic, is it getting worse? Is it getting better? Is it lessening? Is it gathering steam? What's your understanding?
Thank you for that question, Senator. I don't know the answer to that right now. I haven't looked at the data on that. If I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed as a commissioner, that's certainly one of the things we could look at.
Didn't you sign a letter in July of 2013 in which you argued that the child pornography guidelines were too severe? Is that right?
Thank you, Senator. That letter from 2013, many years ago, was drafted by the defenders and as part of their role in commenting on the work of the commission.
You say they, but that was you, right?
I was one of the...
You signed it?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so in the letter, you criticized the current child pornography sentencing guidelines, saying that they result in overly severe guideline ranges in nearly all cases. Is that still your view?
That was the defender view at the time. If I'm
But you
confirmed,
signed the letter, right?
I did in 2013.
Right.
And
that's my question. So you've changed. Sounds like you've changed your mind.
I don't have an opinion on that right now, Senator. I would want to look at the data and get up to speed on where things are right now.
You had an
That was a
opinion in
long-
2013, so you're saying that now you don't have one?
I'm saying that I would want to offer you an informed opinion, and things change over time. That was a long time ago, and
Oh,
I would
indeed.
certainly want to look at
Indeed, they do. You said a number of frankly alarming things in that letter, including saying that you reject the view of some commissioners that a mandatory minimum penalty is ever needed, ever, or appropriate in child pornography cases, ever. So you said you weren't familiar with the facts. Let me just rehearse a few of the facts for you. According to the New York Times, in 2018, there were 45 million online photos and videos of children being sexually abused. That was more than double the number from the previous year. Then the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children reported that in 2021, that number had risen to 85 million. So from 45 in 2018 to 85 million photos, videos of children being exploited online, a huge increase in just the space of those very few years. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds to me like an epidemic. So in light of that, do you still think that parents' concerns with this exploitation of children involves exaggerated fears based on lurid stereotypes and a widespread misunderstanding of the nature of these offenders? That's from your letter.
Thank you, Senator. As a parent, I'm concerned about these images. If I'm lucky enough to be confirmed as a commissioner, I would want to carefully examine all of these issues. The offenses, our statutory obligation as commissioners is to consider all the purposes of sentencing, to gather data, research, and information, and make informed recommendations. And I would want to collaborate with commissioners in making those recommendations.
Well, I'm trying to get a sense of what your policy preferences are. This is a policy-making role. It's a policy-forming role. You had previously said that you thought no mandatory minimums were necessary or appropriate in this context. In light of this data, is that still your position, that you think that no mandatory minimum sentences for these crimes of exploitation against children is appropriate?
If I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed
I think
as a
that's
commissioner,
probably
Senator,
a yes or no answer.
Well, I wanted to say, Senator, is that if I'm confirmed, my obligation as a commissioner is to pass guidelines, amend
I
guidelines
understand
that
what
are
your role is.
consistent.
I'm looking for a yes or no answer. You're not being confirmed to the bench. I'm not asking you to comment on cases that may come before you. You're being confirmed to a policy-making position, and this is deadly serious policy. So I'd like to know, you've taken a position on this. I want to know if you've changed it. Have you changed your position, yes or no?
I don't have a position on mandatory minimums.
You
That's
did have a
decision.
position in 2013. You signed a letter. I've read it to you now multiple times. Senator Blackburn read it to you. I'm looking for a yes or a no. Have you changed your position, or do you still believe that there shouldn't be mandatory minimums for these kinds of crimes against children?
I believe that there are mandatory minimums.
Should
against
there
this
be
crime.
mandatory minimums? I know what the facts are. I'm asking you what your view is, and you're not answering me. Are you not going to answer, I gather?
believe it's really important in entering this position with the Sentencing Commission, if I'm confirmed.
Are
to
there
confer with my
any crimes
colleagues
for which
and-
you would support a mandatory minimum? Because you've also said that you think that the commission ought to change the sentencing guidelines to allow judges to depart from mandatory minimums upon considering the various 3553A factors, which would gut all mandatory minimums. Is there any crime for which you think a mandatory minimum is appropriate?
Thank you, Senator. My understanding is this body decides whether there are mandatory minimums, and as a commissioner, my job would
You
be
make
to follow-
recommendations. I'm asking you if you think that there's any crime, rape, for which there ought to be a mandatory minimum, because you said earlier there shouldn't be. I'm astounded by that.
Thank you, Senator. If I'm confirmed, I'd like to make an informed recommendation on that after consulting.
How am I
with
going to
my
make an
colleagues.
informed judgment on voting for you if you won't tell me what your positions are? I don't know if you changed them or not. It sounds like you have changed them. You signed a letter. You took very frankly radical policy positions, and now you won't answer me. What am I to draw from that?
Senator, I hope that what you draw is that I'm open to listening to this diverse
No,
group of
I think what I
people.
draw from it is that you don't want to answer my questions, because the positions that you took were radical and frankly, I think wrong. And in light of the dangers that children and people all over this country are facing, I think deeply, deeply wrongheaded. I can't possibly support your nomination. I can't support the nomination of someone who wants to do away with mandatory minimums. I think it's a radical position, and I think, frankly, your nomination is indicative of where this administration is on its soft on crime policies. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.